Poveglia Island, a tiny, unassuming speck in the Venetian lagoon, is often referred to as one of the most haunted places in the world. Situated between Venice and Lido, Italy, it has a dark and enigmatic history that stretches back over a millennium. The earliest known records of Poveglia date back to the 5th century, around 421 AD, during a period of social upheaval and migration across northern Italy. Refugees fleeing barbarian invasions reportedly settled temporarily on the island. Over time, the island developed into a small agricultural community, with fields and simple homes dotting its landscape. However, in 1379, during conflicts with the Genoese fleet, the island's inhabitants were forcibly relocated, leaving Poveglia largely abandoned. For centuries, the island remained sparsely populated, with Venice using it intermittently for strategic purposes, such as fortifications and lookout posts. While this early history is relatively mundane, it set the stage for the island's later association with isolation and desolation. Poveglia's grim reputation began in earnest during the 18th century, when the Venetian Republic faced repeated outbreaks of plague. In 1776, the island came under the jurisdiction of the Venetian health authorities, the Magistrato alla Sanità, marking the start of its transformation into a quarantine station, or lazaretto. Ships arriving from foreign ports suspected of carrying disease were forced to dock at Poveglia, and those on board showing signs of illness were isolated on the island. The purpose was to prevent the spread of contagion to the densely populated city of Venice, which had been repeatedly ravaged by epidemics. During this period, Poveglia saw the arrival of countless patients suspected of carrying the plague. Many succumbed to the disease in isolation, while others were forcibly buried or burned on the island. Legends claim that tens of thousands of victims died here, though historians debate the accuracy of these figures. Some sources suggest that as many as 160,000 people perished on Poveglia over the centuries, and that the soil itself became saturated with human ashes. While the exact number remains uncertain, it is indisputable that Poveglia witnessed significant suffering, and these historical tragedies laid the foundation for its haunted reputation. The island's use as a lazaretto extended into the early 19th century, during which it remained a site of disease containment. Reports suggest that victims were sometimes left in makeshift facilities, with minimal care, and mass graves were hastily dug to accommodate the dead. The psychological impact on those sent to the island was immense, as many were left to die in isolation, cut off from family and civilization. The combination of human suffering, death, and isolation created an atmosphere ripe for legend and fear, which would persist for centuries. Following its role as a quarantine station, Poveglia entered a new chapter of its dark history in the 20th century. In 1922, the Venetian authorities converted the island's existing structures into a hospital, later functioning as a mental asylum. This period added a new layer of infamy, as stories of inhumane treatment, cruelty, and psychological torment began to circulate. According to local lore, patients were subjected to harsh conditions, and some suffered under experimental treatments. The island's isolation made it an ideal site for such a facility, as escape was virtually impossible and supervision was constant. One of the most persistent legends involves a sadistic doctor who allegedly performed cruel experiments, including primitive lobotomies, and ultimately succumbed to his own madness. Tales recount that he either jumped from or was thrown from the island's bell tower, with some claiming that his spirit still haunts the ruins. While there is no concrete historical evidence to support these stories, they have become central to the mythos of Poveglia and continue to fuel paranormal investigations and horror narratives. The mental hospital continued to operate until 1968, when it was officially closed. By that time, the island's buildings had already begun to deteriorate, and decades of neglect further contributed to its eerie atmosphere. The combination of abandoned structures, overgrown vegetation, and a history of human suffering created an environment that seemed almost designed for ghost stories. Visitors who dared to explore the island often reported experiencing inexplicable phenomena: sudden drops in temperature, disembodied voices, fleeting shadows, and feelings of being watched or touched by invisible forces. The legends surrounding Poveglia are numerous and diverse, often blending historical facts with folklore. Many urban explorers and paranormal enthusiasts claim to have encountered ghosts of plague victims wandering the ruins, their faces obscured by mist, their cries echoing through the decaying halls. Others report hearing bell tolls from the old bell tower, despite the fact that the bell was removed decades ago. Some describe feeling invisible hands pushing or grabbing them, while others have smelled rotting flesh or burning, despite no apparent source. These stories, while largely anecdotal, have been perpetuated through documentaries, television programs, and online forums, cementing Poveglia's status as a haunted island. Its reputation as one of the most terrifying and paranormal locations in the world has attracted thrill seekers, ghost hunters, and tourists, even though access to the island is officially restricted. The allure of the unknown, combined with the island's tangible history of death and isolation, makes Poveglia a uniquely chilling location. Despite its grim history, Poveglia is also notable for its architecture and remnants of human habitation. The ruins of the hospital and bell tower remain the most prominent structures on the island, standing as silent witnesses to centuries of suffering. Crumbling walls, rusting metal fixtures, and overgrown gardens evoke a sense of melancholy and abandonment. The island also contains remnants of fortifications and simple dwellings used during its earlier history, reflecting its strategic and practical roles over the centuries. The architectural decay contributes significantly to the island's eerie atmosphere. The juxtaposition of man-made structures and encroaching nature creates a visual metaphor for neglect, mortality, and the passage of time. For many visitors, the ruins themselves tell a story as haunting as any ghost legend, a story of human ambition, suffering, and ultimate abandonment. While the legends of Poveglia are compelling, it is important to distinguish historical facts from myth. The island's use as a lazaretto and mental asylum is well documented, as is the isolation and suffering of those confined there. However, many of the more sensational stories, such as mass lobotomies, sadistic experiments, and hundreds of thousands of deaths, are likely exaggerations or fabrications. Archaeological studies have not confirmed mass plague pits on the island, and no verified records support the tales of the Mad Doctor or other extreme atrocities. Nevertheless, the blending of fact and folklore is precisely what makes Poveglia so captivating. The island's dark history provides a foundation for legend, while the lack of complete documentation leaves room for imagination and speculation. This ambiguity has allowed Poveglia to occupy a unique space in popular culture, straddling the line between historical tragedy and supernatural horror. Today, Poveglia remains largely abandoned and inaccessible to the general public. Some parts of the island have been granted under concession for redevelopment, with proposals ranging from public parks to cultural heritage sites. However, safety concerns, structural instability, and environmental challenges have limited any large-scale projects. Saltwater erosion, crumbling buildings, and overgrown vegetation make restoration both difficult and expensive. Despite these challenges, there is growing interest in preserving Poveglia's history in a respectful manner. Controlled tours, historical documentation, and educational initiatives aim to balance the island's dark legacy with cultural and environmental preservation. Even as the supernatural allure of Poveglia continues to attract curiosity, there is an acknowledgement of the real human suffering that defines its past, a past that deserves remembrance alongside the legends. Poveglia's story resonates far beyond the Venetian lagoon. It embodies universal themes of fear, isolation, and the unknown, while also reflecting specific historical realities: the human cost of disease, the treatment of the mentally ill, and the ways societies respond to suffering. Its notoriety in media, literature, and folklore demonstrates the human fascination with places that blur the line between life and death, reality and imagination. The island has inspired documentaries, books, and countless online articles, each exploring its haunted reputation, historical significance, or eerie atmosphere. Paranormal investigators continue to document alleged phenomena, while historians and archaeologists study its past. The combination of documented history, dramatic legends, and tangible ruins creates a narrative that is compelling, mysterious, and unforgettable. Poveglia Island is more than a mere geographic location. It is a symbol of human tragedy, isolation, and the enduring power of legend. From its early days as a temporary refuge and agricultural settlement, to its grim role as a quarantine island and later a mental asylum, Poveglia has been a stage for suffering and death. Its abandoned buildings, overgrown grounds, and decaying architecture evoke an atmosphere of melancholy and dread, while ghost stories and paranormal claims amplify its aura of fear. Though many of the island's most sensational legends may be exaggerated or unverified, they are rooted in a foundation of real human history, illness, confinement, and death, that gives them emotional resonance. Poveglia continues to captivate the imagination of historians, paranormal enthusiasts, and curious travelers alike, serving as a chilling reminder of the past and a testament to the enduring fascination with places where history and legend converge. Ultimately, Poveglia remains a haunting blend of reality and myth, an island where the echoes of suffering mingle with whispers of ghosts, where the boundary between the living and the dead feels unnervingly thin, and where the human imagination continues to find stories of fear, tragedy, and mystery. It is a place where history, legend, and the paranormal meet, ensuring that the haunted legacy of Poveglia will endure for generations to come.